Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another installment of our Legends of Photography series on the Legends of Sport podcast. I'm your host, Andy Bernstein. As I've said throughout this series, it's a huge honor and privilege to be able to interview photographers whose work I have admired and are true legends in the craft we share. Danny Clinch is definitely a legend of photography. His work has blown me away for a long, long time. I became aware of Danny's name when he started photographing Bruce Springteen in 1999, but soon realized that so many iconic photographs that I had seen before were actually shot by Danny. Danny made his mark shooting hip-hop groups in the early 90s when the genre and its artists were relatively unknown. His unique and natural style, personality, and impactful work soon caught the attention of artists across the spectrum of the music industry. His list of subjects is way too long to mention. Just think of a musical artist or band, and chances are very good that Danny has photographed them. He's also a filmmaker and musician himself. Danny runs a wonderful gallery in the heart of Asbury Park, New Jersey, called the Transparent Clinch Gallery, and is a promoter of the annual Sea.Hear.Now surfing, music, and arts festival in Asbury Park. There's lots of common ground between Danny and I. We talk about gaining the trust of our subjects, which in my case, usually athletes and teens. In Danny's, most likely it's musicians and bands. He's a master at his craft and so much fun to talk to. We at Legends of Sport are thrilled to bring this conversation with the legendary Danny Clinch to all of you. So sit back and enjoy, and as always, I'll see you on the backside. I want to welcome Danny Clinch to Legends of Sport podcast. Your accolades, credits go, like 2 pages long here. I'm going to mention a few things right off the bat. Okay. Photographer, filmmaker, musician, gallery owner, Grammy nominee, concert promoter, philanthropist, father. Don't forget that. Did I forget anything? Did I leave anything out?
It's a good list right there.
That's a damn good list, man.
Trying to add to it at every turn.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, this is the first time you and I have met like face to face. I mean, we've been corresponding over, DMs and admiring each other's work and all that. I'm a huge admirer of your work, obviously.
The feeling is mutual.
And thank you. And since this is called the Legends of Sport podcast, okay, let's just dive in right off the bat, Danny, on your photographing sports history, which honestly, I've got to be totally honest with you, took me by surprise. Because you're known, for your filmmaking, of course, for your incredible photography of musicians and bands and everything. Tell me something. Is it different for you to work with an athlete than it is with a musician?
I don't think so necessarily. I think I just approach everybody with the same kind of idea of, treating everybody with respect and, trying to find some common ground. And in fact, my music photography really helps me in my sports photography. Like the idea that, for example, we discovered, I made a film about Pearl Jam playing at Wrigley Field called Let's Play 2. And we interacted with, Theo Epstein and a lot of the ball players at the Cubs. And we found that, rock stars want to be athletes and athletes want to be rock stars.
Yeah, that's funny, man. I've seen the whole thing develop, especially with hip hop and the convergence with the NBA, and the crossover now is almost indistinguishable. I mean, you can, but you're right, they do. Yeah. And it's funny when you go to games and you see, the great musicians are just homaging, especially when Kobe was playing. It was just, and Jordan, it was just, it's funny for me, to see that and be on the other side of it.
Yeah.
So Dave, we always like to talk about where somebody got started, and
Sure.
We did a lot of research and stuff, and I was pleasantly surprised to know that your mom was a photographer. Is that how it started, the bug for you?
Well, yeah, I would say my mom's just the snapshot queen, always photographing, always had a camera, photographing all the family events. And she's 81 now. And we were talking the other day, and, I go to her house and to visit, and sometimes we'll just pull out you know, a couple of her photo albums, and she literally has a closet that is just filled with photo albums,
Wow.
like photo albums from like the 70s and the 80s, and like, you know,
Mhm.
the ones that have those plastic sleeves that
Yeah.
then stick on the thing and they're all
Yeah.
dried out and the photos are falling out and
Yeah.
stuff. It's really, it's really incredible. And, you
Yeah.
know, I don't normally zoom in this particular room, but
Yeah.
these are a lot of my family photos
Oh,
and that,
very
that are
cool.
going on here. So
Uh-huh.
you know, I definitely continued what she started in terms of
Yeah.
photographing the family, and I photograph the family all the time. We were just there for corned beef and cabbage the other day, and you know, I had my camera out and was taking photos as I always do. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you look behind me, this is like um, right there is myself and my sister by my dad's Harley.
Right.
This is this photo right here is my wife and my kids and I, taken by Jim Marshall.
No way.
Great
That's
Jim
amazing.
Marshall.
Wow.
He dumped a bowl of popcorn over his head to get my kids to laugh because he was having no success, and he literally went way out on the limb and just took a
Oh,
big bowl of popcorn and dumped it on his head.
oh, that's beautiful, man.
This
That's so
photograph right here, and I point this out for a reason. This one
yeah.
is one of the images when I first started going to school. I went to school for photography at Ocean County College for school. It was basically visual communications.
Mhm.
And it was one of the photographs I took either there or when I was at New England School of Photography that I felt like I had gotten something. You know, like I looked at the photo and I thought to myself, I really feel like I captured a moment here that's really special. And there's a little surprise in there. And like
Mhm.
I felt like, man, this might be my calling, you know, and
Huh.
it is that photograph really of my two nephews holding my niece.
Huh.
My mom's arm is kind of coming in with like a polka dotted blouse on to the side to make sure they didn't drop my niece, you know.
Uh-huh. That's
Anyway,
interesting.
yeah.
So that was kind of like the epiphany almost of, or like where it, I mean, I can point to it the same way. You know, I went to art center out here in LA,
Uh-huh.
commercial art school. You know, to be a sports photographer was like blasphemy, you know. But I had a couple of teachers that believed in me, and I just will never forget those first few games when I went out and thought, wow, this, like, I could make a living doing this. I mean, people actually
Yeah.
make living at doing this. Became an assistant, which of course you did. I mean, you worked for the greatest of all time. I mean, you worked for
Yeah.
Andy Leibovitz.
Yes.
And I have a funny Andy story if you want to hear it. So
Bring it on.
so when I never met her personally, but when Wayne Gretzky was traded to the Kings in '92, which is probably before your time with her, right? Um,
Um,
were you with her then?
no.
Yeah.
I had already left. I was
Oh,
there
you had already left? Okay.
87, 88 or
Oh,
something like
got
that.
it, got it, got it. Okay. So anyway, she, you know, she comes out and big entourage, the whole thing, spends 3 days with Wayne. And I didn't know that was her style, but she spends 3 days with him, doesn't even take a camera out. And then finally, you know, they figure out where to shoot this thing. So and he was very difficult to get comfortable with. You know, I worked around him a lot and
Yeah,
always very standoffish. I mean, he's nice enough, but you know,
sure.
he's very shy. And that just impressed me, you know, that was her way of doing things. And then the result of it was obvious. There was a connection between her and the subject, which might not have happened if she just showed up, you know, rang the door and wanted to do a shoot. So
Yeah.
how much of that influenced you? Because your style, Danny, I mean, you've heard it from a million people. Your book is like, it's a masterpiece. I mean, your style is so honest, and it's so, there's such a connection between you and your subject. It's like, you know, these people for years, you know, like, and you just happen to have a camera. I mean,
Yeah.
let me ask you this, because I asked Pete Souza this and he had a great answer, but what is it about your personality that makes people comfortable with you as opposed to the other way around?
It's a good question. I
Yeah.
think that I'm just I'm pretty straightforward and honest with people. Like, and I think I've been around other photographers, and Annie was very honest and direct as well. But I've been around other photographers as I was assisting or just watching other people work,
Mhm.
and you can see through someone who's just trying to, you know, get their way and connive you into doing something maybe you don't want to do.
Mhm.
And I have no interest in that. You
Yeah.
know, I will ask someone, I will collaborate with them, and collaborations for me, they don't have to be huge. They don't
Mhm.
have to be big. it can be very subtle.
Mhm.
And my relationship with Bruce Springsteen is that way. Is he understands how to collaborate, and sometimes the collaborations are, we discuss it. He comes up with some thoughts and ideas. He runs them by me. I come up with a mood board and some image ideas, and I show them to him. You
Yeah.
know, and he's such a student of rock and roll.
Yeah.
We all our references are kind of the same,
Mhm.
and so like we get it, we can talk about it and get to it. You know, and other times
Mhm.
it's just very simple as you know, the way he presents himself to me in front of the camera. And
Mhm.
that's the same with anyone. You know, it's the idea for me is I like to find some common ground. And you know, I'm about the moment and the document as well. I really love, you know, I love doing a portrait, a very simple portrait on a backdrop. I did the Grammys for 16 years doing that, and having 3 minutes with someone and
Yeah.
trying to capture something, which is really fun. I
Uh-huh.
like being in a location that has some story to it.
Yeah.
And I like to,
Yeah.
you know, get people to drop their guard and, you
Mhm.
know, like hang out enough to just get that moment that gives you a little window into like who the person really is.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
so I don't know what it is about me that allows people to see that.
Mm.
You know, I also, depending on the shoot, I could just be wandering around with just, you know, my Leica and just,
Yeah.
you know, I'm at a show or I'm backstage or maybe I'm at a recording session, whether I've been hired to be there or not.
Mhm.
And, you know, the quietness of the document and just hiding in the background and capturing these moments. I love
Mm.
someone writing a set list or writing a song or going through something with the band.
Yeah.
Love all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's moments where I'm hired to do some album packaging and publicity and or a magazine cover. And I like to bring you know, a great crew with me. I like put on some James Brown because it always gets people moving. And I encourage anyone who's on the set with me to interact with the subject and like with what's going on. I'm not like, all right, quiet on the set, everybody shut up.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the one who's running the show here.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I like to leave it loose, and you know, someone distracts your subject and
Mhm.
they look off to the side with a great expression.
Mhm.
There's these little moments like that's what I'm looking for. And
Yeah.
if I put someone in a spot to photograph, say, oh, that light's really beautiful over there. Why don't you go sit down on the corner of that couch? And, you know, I mean, before they're even sitting down, I'm ready to just grab that moment before they've settled in and before they've just been like, okay, what do I do? You know,
Right. Right. Wow.
like
Yeah.
that's kind of, and you know, I love Pete Souza.
Mhm. Yeah.
What a guy, and
Yeah.
what a great photographer, and what a wonderful person,
Mhm.
and human, and such a great sense of humor, and he's just so intelligent. And we had a great conversation,
Mhm.
which was that he's a documentarian
Mhm.
and that someone had tried to hire him to do portraits of some people. And
Mhm.
he's just like, no. And they're like, what do you mean, no? And he's like, well, that's not what I do. I
Yeah.
hang around and I document what's going on.
Mhm.
And and
Yeah.
they said, well, how about we give you more money? And he was like, no.
Yeah.
I was
No.
just so admired that. But
Yeah.
from
No, Pete is very,
yeah,
he knows, he definitely knows where his lane is.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, well, we can get into a whole conversation about
yeah,
Pete.
of
But
course.
one of the things that you and I and Pete and a lot of photographers who are around famous people, we're around a lot of famous people. And, there's the element of trust that comes through in your photography. I think probably almost more than any photographer I've ever met. Michael Zagaris is a very good friend of mine, and his rapport, his rock and roll stuff, but then his sports stuff, you can tell that there was just this incredible trust. And that whole fly on the wall thing,
Yeah,
which, I don't really, and Pete says this, we don't believe in being invisible, right? Because and you say that in your book, you talk about being part of the scene, being part of what's going on, almost part of the band in a way, right? And you
yeah,
actually have been part of the band. I was there when you were up there playing the harmonica, but
yeah,
another story. Um, but the trust element is so, and we have to have like enough self-confidence, which I still lack 40 plus years in, to just feel like I belong there, and feel
yeah,
comfortable in that thing, and be so comfortable and so prepared with your equipment. And your photography is so honest and pure, like you don't even feel like it was it was a moment, or that it was, the lighting is so simple when you do use lighting, right?
Yeah,
Is
I keep it simple.
would you describe your style in any particular way, or is it just you?
You know, I would say I just have so many influences, and I'm like, my personality is that way and such that like the
Yeah.
music I listen to is all over the map. The photography I love is all over the map. I'm just a big fan of the document. So,
Mm, mhm.
Robert Frank, Danny Lyon, Cartier-Bresson,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
folks like that, and then the great portrait photographers, whether it's Annie or it's Irving Penn or Richard Avedon and people like that,
Mhm.
Arnold Newman. And so like I pull from all of those things.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, my style is just it's a collection of things that I love,
Uh-huh.
styles that I love.
Right.
And when I talk to young photographers, I often say, I struggled with my style. I was in school and they're all trying to tell you, you got to develop a style and what's it going to be. And I finally realized that um I loved, kind of wide angle lenses. Like not super weird wide, just like a wider view,
Mhm.
28 millimeter for those photo geeks out there, 35. I like the kind of a wide lens. I like being in the middle of things. I
Mhm.
like the document. I like back then you had to choose, do you black and white or color a lot of times.
Right.
I leaned heavily on black and white. I
Yeah.
loved rock and roll. I love cars. I love motorcycles.
Yeah.
I like grit. I like energy. And then like, oh, okay, so there's my style.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
if
Yeah.
if I liked fashion and I liked flary lenses and long lenses and shooting through things and color, like, oh, there's my style. It's
Mhm.
pretty simple, actually.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you can, if you can, get through it. But
Yeah.
it took me a long time to realize it. And I'm finally, just comfortable. And of course, everyone wants to be, Irving Penn, at least I've always wanted to be Irving Penn, where I could solve any photographic problem that came my way. If it's like, oh, it's fashion, or it's a president, or it's a musician, or it's,
Yeah.
these indigenous people, or it's a still life of frozen food. Like the
Mhm.
guy was given an
Yeah.
assignment and he solved it. And I had always hoped to be that. And I feel like I have to a certain extent. And
Mhm.
I have done sports and I have photographed presidents and I have celebrities and that, but I do lean into the music space and I just love music. I
Yeah.
love the people there. Everyone's, they're artists, they're fellow artists. We tend to get along really well. I play music, so I also can feel really comfortable being around those folks
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
all that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, there's a great picture in your book at the end of all your cameras just set up, right?
Yes.
And then, I was going through it and I was looking at it, and then you have these incredible portraits of Tupac that you shot on 4x5, right? And I read
Yeah.
something about how you just, I mean, how do you decide, or how did you decide back in the day? Am I shooting this
Yeah.
on 2.25? Am I going to go 4x5? Like Walter Yost was shooting like 8x10 Polaroids. You know,
I love Walter. Yeah.
how do you make that decision?
Um, that's a great question. It's interesting. I had a teacher. You were talking about a teacher in school that was got behind what you were doing, and I had
Mhm.
a documentary class, and I wanted to. They were giving us a photo essay. I said I want to post up with a band
Mhm.
and photograph them, and I thought she was going to say, well,
Mhm.
Instead, she was completely the opposite. She said, "Oh, I shoot for the Boston Globe. I photograph the musicians. What a great idea!
Yeah.
I support you. Go ahead." And I did. And so combining my love of the document and I like spontaneity and like capturing these moments and being ready to grab it, real quick.
Yeah.
But also in school, I had an architecture class, right?
Uh-huh.
And I had to buy this like old Calumet 4x5
Yeah.
camera.
I probably have
Uh,
the same gray one with the like
the gray one.
the
Yeah.
bellows with the rail, the whole thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And for those who don't know cameras, it's
Yeah.
very cumbersome. It's very slow. You
Right.
can't just click away.
Yeah.
It looks like an accordion. You put this hood over your head. Don't move or you'll be out of focus. It's like,
Exactly.
it's a big deal, right?
Uh-huh.
So at a certain point, I said to myself, and this wasn't that far into my career. It was, in the early 90s.
Mm.
I said, I'm going to bust out this 4x5 and kind of approach, like, take my inspiration from Irving Penn's World in a Small Room and all those simple portraits he did with the North Light.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm going to do my own version of it. I have a pinched umbrella, which I learned from Stephen Meisel, who learned it from Richard Avedon. And I just developed this little system with a nice little backdrop. And I started to bring it on shoots. And then I started to bring it. I would just go to where people were playing music, and I would find like a little corner. It cracks me up. I find this little corner. I'd hang my backdrop. I'd put up the umbrella. I have got this 4x5, and I was doing Polaroids and putting them in the little soup, and all that stuff.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And I just decided I'm going to take a step away from the captured moment and all that stuff every now and again. And I'm going to bring this to my shoots, and this is going to be a part of what I'm offering up for my client, whoever it might be, or my own personal self. So I started to go to these events and document. And one of the people that I photographed during this time period was Tupac. And I was shooting for Rolling Stone. They hired me to photograph Tupac Shakur, and he had just made Poetic Justice, I think. He had just made a film. He had just had a record come out, and they wanted to do a story on him. Now, they weren't doing any stories on hip hop at the time, and I think he understood that. And he showed up on time. He didn't have an entourage. It was really a rarity, because a lot of times people would bring the party, which was also fun.
I know. I know.
But he showed up with his guy, and I did these portraits. And what he was very professional. He was like a theater guy, actually, a theater kid. And super smart. And he was like, I bought some other clothes. I'm going to change my shirt. I'm going to change this up. I said, okay. Takes his shirt off. I see all his tattoos. I got the 4x5 there. I'm like, oh man, we need to just catch this real quick without the shirt on, And he was into it, and we did it. And it was really, really special. And I used the camera with I photographed the Smashing Pumpkins with the 4x5, the Breeders, Tupac, Big L, Onyx, Cypress Hill, Ice-T, the Fugees, like all these incredible hip hop bands. And I don't know when this show is going to drop. Part of my nod to the 50th anniversary of hip hop, which is going on right now.
That's crazy to even think about. Where I pulled out a series of the 4x5 images, which I actually have never, like, I've done the Tupac one, and I've had a small version of the Cypress Hill in my studio. And the grill, the Old Dirty Bastard grill, is actually in my book. Still moving. But I'm going to put those up for the first time ever in a very small but concentrated and very strong body of work for this particular show. But the thing with 4x5 is, and any photographer listening, is that you can't rapid fire anything. I mean, subjects have to be patient.
That's right.
And stuff happens in between, changing the film and blah, blah, blah. And, but you nailed it, man. That portrait of Bruce in front of the garage with the flag, was that on 4x5?
No, that was on my Hasselblad.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I love that one.
Thank you. And you asked me about how do I make my decisions, which is one of the part of the question.
Right. Yes.
You should see my camera bag. My camera bag looks kind of like that page, which is I've got my Leicas on my shoulder. I had, always these old Nikons, FEs and FE2s with film. My Hasselblad, Widelux, half frame, Diana cameras, Holga cameras, which are the plastic cameras. And sometimes I'd just get stuck, and I'd be like, I'll try this Holga, and I won't advance it all the way, and I'll let it overlap. Just take some chances. Polaroid, lots of Polaroid for me.
Still incredible.
You got to find it. But,
you're still doing Polaroid, really?
Yeah,
that's incredible.
You know what I found is there was the 665 Polaroid.
Right?
And did you ever use that stuff?
Oh, sure. For 2 1/4, right?
What's that?
But it was for the 2 1/4, right? I was shooting.
You could
665
put it
was
in. You could put it in a Hasselblad back. You could put it
right.
in a Mamiya. You could
Yeah.
also put it in like the old
Yep.
Polaroids or the Konica Instapress, which is the one
Right.
that I have.
Yeah.
You would peel it and then you would take the back and put it into a little solution of
Mhm.
water, and you would have a negative,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that stuff was a dime a dozen back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Now, if you find a pack, it's like $150 for
Yeah.
10 sheets, and half of them might be dry.
It's insane. And then try getting somebody to print it. That's another
Yeah,
thing. But
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
whole other
yeah, yeah.
story. Jeez.
So
Yeah,
anyway, I
incredible.
forget where I was going there, but yeah, lots
Yeah.
of different cameras. And I always felt like that Polaroid camera for me, and still to this day, everything that you shoot with it just looks classic for some
Yeah.
reason. So you could be in a hotel room with the
Yeah.
worst lighting and the worst background or no background at all. And if you could just get the light just right and finesse it, you would get a great photo of someone.
Yeah. Incredible.
By the
Yeah.
nature of the equipment.
Well, we used to, you know, as you did, I'm sure we used to use Polaroid all the time to check lighting, and you know, you'd have
Yeah.
a stand-in and blah blah blah.
Yep.
And my very first experience shooting Magic Johnson was like his second year, and was basically my rookie year. And I'm hired to shoot. You're gonna love this story. I'm hired to shoot this poster for Converse. He's doing a commercial over there. Yeah, I'm gonna get him for like 90 seconds. I'm gonna bring him over. I got the set, the whole thing. I had a stand-in, and he comes in, and it was on the old RZ camera.
Yeah, I love it.
And I get him in the position I want, and I go to shoot it, and he goes, "Whoa, what are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean? What am I doing? I'm going to shoot a Polaroid." He goes, No. He goes, "When I come in your set, we don't do Polaroids. You be ready." And now,
Okay.
you know, fast forward 40 plus years, I've never done another Polaroid with Magic Johnson.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So it was like kind of a roll of the dice, but we were ready
Yeah.
anyway. But you know, Bruce says in your book, in the forward, he said, quote, "We stand a few feet apart and conduct a silent conversation." Right. Which is such a beautiful thing. I mean, coming from him, anything's beautiful, but you know, just for him to say that, you know, that there's this unwritten, unspoken thing. So I want to ask you about a picture that is not in your book, by the way, because I think it happened after. When you did Letter to You, and you take him out in a driving snowstorm. Where was it? In Central Park?
Yep.
First of all, how'd you talk him into that? And what you came away with was absolutely spectacular.
Well, the thing about Bruce, and you know what, I need to read that thing again because I think it freaked me out so much that I think I only read it once.
Yeah.
And I have the book around me all the time, and I never just get in there and read it. I
got to hold it up. I'm gonna get a hernia.
It's so beautiful.
This book is unbelievable.
Forward by Bruce Springteen.
Yeah, that is
amazing.
Opus. Yeah.
The thing about Bruce is he is the guy, his work ethic is so incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And he will go the extra mile. You know, you could be with a celebrity, and anyone, let's not even say a celebrity, let's just say, and you ask someone like, "Hey, how about we do this?" And they're just like, "Well, I'm a little too busy for that. It sounds good, but you can't do it. Maybe some other time,
Yeah.
So Bruce was doing Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
And he allowed me to come and hang out, at the Broadway shows. And
yeah, I saw those beautiful behind those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one of him in the mirror with
and that dressing room.
And nobody is going in that room. I mean, I would come by, and there's like 3 guys outside the door.
Yeah.
First, you got to get through the first level. Right. Then you get to the second guy, and then you get to the other guy.
Yeah.
And as long as I let him know I was coming and stuff, and there was no surprises, he would allow me to come in, because I would go into the room and I would, take a couple of photographs of him, like writing a set list or preparing for the show, or in there playing his guitar. And I might ask him, I might not direct him a little bit. "Oh, if you just were over there, that would be great," kind of thing. And I'd be like, "Thanks, see you, bye."
Yeah.
And I would leave, So like, I'm not trying to hang out with him.
No, you're in, you're out. Yeah.
I'm in and I'm out. And that really boded well for me. And he would always, invite me back. And, there's just so much respect there that I have for him.
But the snow picture, you got to tell me that story.
Yeah. So I was getting there.
Yeah.
How
I was
many
getting there.
hours we got here?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so anyway, I said to him,
Yeah.
I said, listen, here you are, you're living, kind of living in New York. You're here for months, if not a year or whatever. We
Mhm.
should take a walk in the city and just capture, a great shot of you in the city.
Yeah, like the James
Walking through
Dean
the city.
moment. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Hanging out, Dylan Avedon photo, whatever, right?
Right.
And he was like, okay, yeah, cool. And he said, just, send me a text and we'll set something up. I was like, oh, great.
Mhm.
So I send him a text. We agree to do the shoot like on a Wednesday. I said, let's do 2:00. It'll be nice. Should be nice out. A little cold, maybe. So that morning we find out that there's a snow, like a weird snow squall that wasn't even really planned,
Mhm.
is blowing in. So I text him. I say, hey, looks like it's going to snow. I'm down. I'm still going to head up there. I'll see you at 2:00. And he said, yeah, I'll see you up there. I'm like, okay. So
Yeah.
I get up there. I get up there like an hour early, maybe 90 minutes early. I'm walking around the park, my assistant and I. And I was going to go by myself, but I was like, I need to make sure I have everything I need. So I have my assistant, Cody, along, and we're just walking around, checking out the spots, like, oh, this is where that photo was taken. And like, we're just like getting pretty excited about it. It starts to snow,
Yeah.
and it's snowing, and it's snowing harder. It's snowing harder, like getting snow built up on my hat, I'm like shaking it off. I'm like, and it's like 2:00, and then it's like 2:10, and it's like 2:20.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, okay. And I look down at my phone, and it's Bruce. He's like, oh, I'm on my way. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So he
Yeah.
comes out and he says, he gets out of a cab. He's, got an umbrella in his hand. He doesn't put it up yet, but he gets out of the cab and he comes over and he says, man, I was just having a hard time catching a cab. And I'm like, I'm just imagining Bruce Springteen
Standing on the
like
corner
out
in the
trying to catch a
snowstorm.
cab. Nobody recognizes him, of course, right? And
Right.
I was like, I want that photograph. Where's
Yeah,
that?
right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so anyway, he comes walking towards me. He goes, I hope you got a plan.
Yeah,
Like,
throw that in the
I've been
gauntlet
here.
down.
I've been
Yeah.
here a while. I got it. I know exactly what I want to do. And in
Yeah.
fact, I
Yeah.
said, why don't you just stand right here? He
Mhm.
literally was 20 yards out of the cab.
Yeah.
I was like, stand right here. There's that vanishing point of 72nd Street.
Mhm.
You've got the Dakota on the right.
Yeah.
You got snow is coming down. And at first, when I look at that photo, when I was taking it, I was like, oh, all those rickshaw bikes were
Yeah.
there, and they're often like really gaudy in that.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't really sure I would like them. And as I look at them now, because of the snow, they were all wrapped in these little things, and they're like, it's
Yeah.
almost timeless,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
it's a
and I
it's a
literally just
peaceful
went,
picture.
shot like 10 frames there. I was like, boom, boom, boom. There. Oh yeah. How about this? Is that? Bam. Get them, and we leave. And,
Yeah.
the spot. And I go, oh, let's go into the park. And I literally could have just went home after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I always threaten to do this, and I wanted to make a note to myself that I need to find out how many frames in
Yeah.
I was when I shot that photo, because I swear it's probably like number 6 or 7, lucky
Sure.
7.
Yeah, it's always that way, right?
And yeah, it's either the very beginning or the end, right?
Yeah, at least it wasn't frame 37 back in the day, right?
Right. Exactly.
I'd be in some
38.
boxing match and it'd be like the end of the fight, guy would get knocked out. I'd be on frame 37. But anyway.
Oh God.
Yeah.
That's such a painful experience.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then we went in and wandered around the park for a little while, and he said, well, this was fun, man. Thanks. And I said, yeah, it was great. We got some great stuff. I'm sure of it. And he says, okay, I'm going to Tavern on the Green to get some hot chocolate. And I was like, all right. And he put some earbuds in,
Yeah.
and he put up his umbrella, and
Yeah.
he just walked off into the distance. And I was like,
classic.
quick as he went down. But and so what happened was, and this is a great part of the story. They recorded the record at Bruce's place with the E Street Band. And Tom Zimney, who is Bruce's documentarian, was there filming.
Yeah, I saw it.
And they made this great film about the letter to you. And it happened to snow while they were recording. And it snowed those days. And it was like, so Tom ended up filming beautiful shots of Bruce walking through the property and the snow and the snow out the window and all this became part of the story. And they came to me, and this was, during COVID, and they said, we're not going to be doing any shoots right now, but like, can you send me any images you have of Bruce that you've shot recently, potentially for an album cover. And long story short was I had sent, along with all the other images I sent the snow stuff. And they chose that, and I didn't really fully understand why until I saw the film. And then Bruce had said, "Oh yeah, this is like a perfect match for the whole project." And
plus, if you think about it, it was such a solitary time for all of us, and he's just by himself in the snow. It's a peaceful moment, but it could be a lonely moment too. But it wasn't the way you shot it. Yeah, incredible. Thanks for that story, Dan. Dan,
sure.
Question about this book. Okay. First of all, I mean, how did you possibly edit this book together with the millions of photos you had to consider, the way it's laid out? It's spectacular.
Friends that you have that aren't, or that didn't make it in, or
well, they made the back inside cover. I can tell that you wanted to get a few more people in there. So
absolutely true. As anyone who's made a book, obviously, it was hard. But I was, I partnered up with my friend Stefan Nedvetsky, who is he's a creative. He's got a company, a small ad agency. Well, they're getting bigger by the moment, in New York City called Yard. And we worked on the John Barbados campaigns together, photographing Iggy Pop and Green Day and, on and on. It's a great campaign. Gary Clark Jr., Jimmy Page. And he and I just became pals. And he has a very classic eye. And he's also a very straightforward person, great sense of humor. We love each other. We always busting each other's chops. And he would have the strength to say to me, or the directness to say, "Look, I know you love that photo because you had a great time and you were with somebody you really liked, but that's not the photo for the book, right?" And I'd be like, "Oh man, come on."
Well, the old photographers are the worst editors thing, right?
So we'd barter. I'd be like, "All right, you give me that one and I'll give you this one." And we would go back and forth, and we just had a blast doing it. And he's, again, I always feel like my approach to my photography, although as most people in the early 90s who were shooting indie rock and hip hop, like there was a lot of cross processing experimenting going on there. That was like a little crazy. But I think overall, like I try not to be trendy, I try to stick to like the classic moment, classic photography. And I feel like he's a designer in that same way. And
what a great meeting of the minds. It's wonderful.
I think that the photographs, they don't go out of style if they're classic.
No, they're beautiful. So Dave, I know you've given me so much time, man. I want to talk about your gallery. Okay. So what was the impetus of the gallery? How did it start? You do a lot of stuff out of that gallery. I follow you, religiously, and you're doing concerts and you're doing photo exhibitions and all kinds of stuff. So how did that all start for you?
Well, my wife and I have been together forever, and we would always go to the Stone Pony as kids, go to see some shows there. Trying to, I'd always bring my camera, hoping that, Bruce would roll in and sit in with someone,
Did he?
Did once not until way later on in my life, but I remember going to see the Greg Allman Band and going to see Warren Zevon and and people like that, and hoping that he might show up. But anyway, we were always going there, and we love Asbury Park. And a good friend of mine, my friend Tim Donnelly, who's also my partner, one of my partners in the Sea.Hear.Now music festival. He moved to Asbury, and we just started hanging out there a lot with our friends. And we were doing little gallery shows up there, Tim and I. And my wife and I were on the boardwalk one day, and this woman walked up to us who had worked for iStar, which is the company that built the Asbury Hotel and the new Asbury Ocean Club, and owns a lot of property. And they've really put in a lot of energy and goodwill into Asbury Park to bring it back.
Mhm.
And so this woman came up and said, "Hey, we've got a great space in the Asbury Hotel building, that atrium spot that's in the front of the building on the east side, and we want to do a gallery show there. And would you be interested in doing a pop-up gallery of
Mhm.
your work? You know, we know you work with Bruce and Pearl Jam and
Mhm.
all these great musicians, and you've been around Asbury for a long time."
Yeah.
And to be honest, our first thought was, "Oh man, these gallery shows they are a lot of work, they're a lot of money
Yeah.
to pull off,
Yeah.
and you don't necessarily make your money back,
Yeah.
and
Right.
it's a time suck." And that I said, but something feels pretty cool about it. Like let's ask her some questions. So we said, we'd like to do it this way, and she said, "Yeah, that we can do it. We can do that, and we want to put these vinyls up in the windows, and we want to, um, you know." If you'll pay for the printing and the framing and that. And they're like, "Sure." And I was like, "Well, we also want a drum kit and like some amplifiers for guitars." And they just
Yeah.
kept saying, "Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
fine. Yeah." And they invested in us. Right.
Right.
And
Right.
it was pretty cool. So we decided to do it. And
Yeah.
our friend Tina, who runs the gallery, had a small shop selling mid-century modern furniture and art, and I had in fact given her a Tupac photograph of mine, which she had hanging up in there, which she would get a commission on if she sold it. And it was a great little spot, and people loved it. She was right next to a coffee shop. It became like a place to hang.
Mm.
Well, long story short, her lease came up, and she agreed to run the gallery,
Mhm.
and so that's how we run it. We run it as
There's a
as like
permanent
a
pop-up.
community living room,
Yeah. Right. But what was temporary has become,
Yeah.
God
Oh yeah.
willing,
So
permanent.
3 months turned into 3 years,
Yeah, it's
turned into now
beautiful.
6 years. So
Yeah.
we're there, we're paying a lease, we're just still doing shows, we're still giving back to the community whenever we
Mm.
can,
Yeah.
which is really
That's wonderful, man.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
let's end by talking about your festival, the
yeah,
Sea.Hear.Now festival, which
yeah,
had to go on hiatus like everything else, for
yep,
COVID. I
yep,
actually was going to go with my buddy. I call him my Bruce buddy because he and I've seen like 50 something shows. He and I together.
yeah,
We were going to go, and then of course COVID hit. That was the end of that. But the impetus of that festival. When is it? And how
yeah.
can people find it online?
It is in September.
Hmm.
It's called See Here Now.
Yep.
It's on the 16th and 17th this year, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, and it was, back in the day when I was saying earlier about Tim and I, Tim would organize these little surf art shows and photography shows and put a band in there and stuff. And he was calling them See Here Now.
Yeah.
And he and I had always wanted to do, we had dreamed of doing our own festival. So we created a one sheet after we saw Gentlemen of the Road, which
Hmm.
was put on by Mumford and Sons.
Okay.
And they'd put these little festivals on, not that little, but not that big either. And they
Yeah.
would go to towns that needed some cash, that
Mm.
needed money, that had some hardships. They
Mhm.
would put on a show there and try and bring revenue to the community. And in Seaside Heights, New Jersey, we had Sandy, and we
Mhm.
had a big fire on the
Yeah.
boardwalk down there. So
Right.
they chose that spot as a spot to do it.
Mm.
Came out, Tim and I went to the show. We're friends with Mumford and Sons. They put on a great show. We were super inspired, and we started shopping our one sheet around. And after going, hitting many, many dead ends, we came across Tim Sweetwood, who works for C3 and does
Mhm.
Shaky Knees and Innings Festival for you sports fans.
Mhm.
The last one was this past weekend, Innings Festival in Tampa.
Yeah.
And he
What is
also does one in Tempe like a month back.
Okay.
But Green Day,
Oh. Mhm.
and they have like baseball players come out and they do signings and they do like little workshops.
Well, that's cool. I haven't heard
Very
of that.
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool for the
Hmm.
sports fan.
Interesting.
And it's been very successful. So Tim Sweetwood, H.M. Woolman, Tim Donnelly, and
Mhm.
myself partner up. Tim says, "I like the idea. Let me come to Asbury and see let me see the site." He
Yeah.
comes down, and when you stand on that boardwalk and you're standing next to Convention Hall,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you see the Stone Ponies right over there, the Wonder Bars right over there,
Yeah.
he just was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
and
And
he
it's
got
wide
it.
open. It's a big,
Yeah,
expansive space.
it's
You know, the
it's a
beach
big
is
space.
huge and yeah, right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
incredible.
right.
And
Hmm.
so he brought it to his partners, and they were all into it. And the whole idea is basically music, surfing, and art.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the killer music
Yeah.
component.
Yeah.
Our first year, we had Incubus as a headliner, and Jack Johnson. We had G Love. We had just a bunch, Brandy Carlisle.
Yeah.
So our idea is like musicians who make art, or musicians who surf, and surfers who make music.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just try to put, like, that's the kind of idea. Where a lot of the people who come through, like, Pearl Jam, for example, came through. Eddie surfs, Mike surfs.
Really?
Jeff Ament is a great artist.
Sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
Amazing.
what we do is we put a pop-up Transparent Clinch Gallery on the site,
Mm-hmm.
and we get art from the musicians who make art,
Mm-hmm.
and then we sell the art and give a portion to charity, a portion back to the artists.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the artists just say give it to the charity,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and then they do like a little live music in there. It's really special.
Oh,
Killer surfers, men and women from
yeah.
all over the country. It's just and great music.
That's so
Everything
great.
from
Yeah.
punk rock to legacy acts like Blondie and Joan Jett, and
Yeah.
our killer headliners.
Mm-hmm.
This year we have the Foo Fighters,
No way.
who are
Wow.
dear friends of mine.
Yeah.
We have the Killers. I
Yeah.
actually did the last round of Foo Fighters publicity photos
Mm-hmm.
for Taylor passed. God
Yeah.
bless him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I also did the Killers photos too. So
Mm.
sometimes even in my own festival, the photos that are up
Yeah.
are mine, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, kind of a little bit freaky, but yeah, that's amazing. Well, I got to
It-
come this year. I have a
Oh,
daughter.
you got to come.
I have a daughter in Philly, and those dates are ringing a bell with me because she's a dancer, and her
Mm.
dance company, I think, has got something going on in September. So yeah,
Well, maybe you can hit one of the days.
yeah, it would be awesome,
Um,
man.
the other thing I was going to mention
Yeah,
about the festival, which
yeah.
we love, and we try to, like, we keep the community in mind there, from the younger kids to the older folks to the gay community there. It's like everybody is considered, and it's very cool. And like, I think parents can bring their kids to see Stevie Nicks, and then the kids will drag their moms over to see like Wet Leg, or a band that
Yeah,
they've never heard of, and it's
yeah.
like really a beautiful
That's so great. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to it, Danny. I hope, God willing, the timing will work out. That'd be tremendous. Hey,
Right
listen,
on.
I forgot to mention you that I did actually see you in person on opening night in Tampa. You were
Oh, okay.
probably like 10 yards from me. I mean, seriously, I was with Pat and Chris Riley, with my friend
Oh,
Chris, and I was yelling at you, but of course the show was going on.
oh man.
But you doing your thing, man. You were like locked in,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I
get
was
locked in.
partying up a storm, and Pat, I mean, you've been around Pat Riley at a Bruce show, but he is fanboy to the max,
That's funny.
yeah.
That's great. I
So
love to
great.
hear that about people.
Yeah.
Here's a great moment for sports fans.
Okay.
And then I'm going to space on who was the Cubs manager when they won the World Series.
Ooh. Joe Madden?
Joe Madden,
Joe Madden.
right? So, and forgive me, that's sacrilegious, but anyway, I go to the game, and like I'm basically, it's like game 4, I think, and it's at Wrigley, and I got a field pass, kinda, and I'm like wandering around, and Steve Green is the photographer
Green,
there.
sure. Yeah,
Great
long
guy.
Yep.
He helped me get to a certain point, and then and then I think there was somebody else there and said, Joe Madden's like a huge Springsteen fan, right? He's friends with Max. And I was like, no, I didn't know that, or I did know that. I can't remember. Anyway, he says, well, if I get a chance, I'll introduce you to him. I'm like, well, I'm sure he's kind of busy.
Yeah.
It was
freaking
like
World
batting
Series over
practice
here.
for the World Series. So he introduces me to him,
Yeah.
and we start talking, and I'm like, yeah, and like I'm the only guy out there without a baseball hat on, right?
Right.
And And, we're just having a great conversation. And he keeps talking and he keeps asking me more questions and telling me more stories. And I start to get kind of uncomfortable because I'm like, I've been standing
Shouldn't
here
you be like, there's baseball over here, but
20 minutes.
that's
I'm
hilarious.
like looking over my shoulder and I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, well, I think I'll let you go. You're probably busy.
Yeah. Don't you got to submit that lineup card or something? I
Oh my
mean,
gosh.
oh, that's
And then
great.
at the end of if you've never seen that film,
Yeah.
let's play two.
No, I haven't seen it.
So Pearl Jam, the idea is Pearl Jam's playing two
Mhm.
nights at the at Wrigley Field, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time, the Cubs are going on a run.
Mm.
And I say to Kelly Curtis, the band's manager at the time, I said, if they go on a run, like that's going to be part of the story. Like we need to, and I was like, we might need to bump the budget up a little bit to, and Kelly's like, if they go on a run, we're doing this, right?
Yeah.
So sure enough, they go on a run, and I'm texting with Eddie Vedder, and I say, I'm coming out, and he was like, well, if you can catch me, because I'm going out there, I'm not bringing Big Pete, it's just me running around with my friends and having a good time. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
So I go out, I put a small crew together, and we film this whole thing. It's amazing. And at the end of the end of the film, basically, I'm at Game 7, and I'm with Ed and Theo, and they invite me to go sit because Theo's wife was going to stay up with their son for a while in the box. I'm sitting at Game 7 of the World Series, like in the best seat in the whole place,
like the president, the presidential box
with Eddie Vedder, no less. And I'm just sitting there, and my phone just starts going.
Because you're all over TV, everybody's seeing you.
Are you sitting behind that?
That's classic. That's so funny. Well, but that's one of the benefits of the job, right? That you just end up at the World Series, man.
It's not lost on me, man.
Well, I tell you something, Danny. One of these days, we'll get you to an NBA Finals, okay? And you do your thing behind the scene. Well, you do what you do, right?
Yeah.
At the finals. And I got a call with my boss. He and I are pretty close. He loves your work, of course. And
amazing.
So
Oh my God. I would be so blown away by that opportunity.
It's similar, but it's so different from your world. But it's the same thing. You got the inner sanctum, and you got you got the layers of people you got to get through and get to know and schmooze a little bit once in a
while. I've gone to basketball games where I've brought my camera, and soccer games, hockey or whatever. And recently I went to this hockey game at the Garden, and I ended up with these incredible seats, gifted to me by Rock Positano, who's do you know Rock? He's the podiatrist for a lot of the sports teams, the Giants and the Rangers. Yeah. He's a lovely guy. And here I am sitting with my kids, like right behind the net. And I knew it. I knew where I was sitting, and I'd gone so many times to games and just brought my camera in. Well, I brought my Canon with a really nice lens. I'm going to be right there. Well, the security's just like, no, can't do it. Right? No, you haven't been cleared, this and that. And I was like, I've been in here a bunch of times. Yeah. Like, yeah, you were probably up there. And I was like, okay. Right. So I had just gotten the new iPhone, and I shot pictures from there. I gotta say,
it's crazy.
It was crazy how good that camera.
It's almost like, I mean, you could throw away all those cameras that you have, and well, not really, but it's insane what it can do, what the camera can do. Yeah, I grew up in the Garden. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. My dad had season tickets to the Rangers my entire life, from earliest memory, 6, 7 years old, till I went to college, almost every game. And then fast forward 30 whatever plus years, I'm working for the LA Kings as a team photographer. We have to go back there in 2014 to play the Rangers in the Cup final. And I almost felt like, my dad had died years before, but I almost felt like sacrilegious. I'm like working for another team. I got another jacket on, it's terrible. Anyway, listen, Danny, got to let you go, man. This was so much fun.
Oh my goodness.
Your time. And thanks for everybody on your side who made this happen, because you're a busy guy. So thank you so much, man.
Can we get on the record that you and I are trading a print?
Dude, anytime. You tell me what you want. I know what I want from you, but I have, you can't see it, but on the wall right over here, got 2 Danny Clinches.
Nice.
That my wife bought for a significant birthday. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and one at home, by the way. And
Nice.
I got a Frank Stefanko, Frank's famous one with the T-Bird or whatever. It
Oh,
was a T-Bird, right?
Corvette.
Yeah, Corvette. And that's a whole other conversation, the lineage of Springsteen photographers that goes back like
Yeah, I saw
forever.
Frank in Philly the other night.
I
We were hanging
know.
out.
I follow Frank and
Um,
yeah,
I
fantastic.
just want to ask you one quick question,
Sure.
because
Yeah, please.
I obviously, I guess you were able to mount a camera behind the backboard.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And was it autofocus, or was it
Okay,
pre?
so we do and sometime you'll come out and on a game night and I'll take you and show you the entire setup, right? But we do a system of 5 or 6 remote cameras every single game that are in strategic spots around the court. So one is through the backboard, one is in a hole that I invented, like at the bottom. There's one overhead. There's blah blah blah. Anyway, and those are all pre-focused on basically 6 to 12 inches from the net. And when the action goes towards the basket, I sit on the other side. So then I hit my little remote button. But that's how those are taken. And that whole technology was started way back in the 60s by John Zimmerman. It was all hardwired, if you can imagine. And then we at the NBA perfected a radio system of triggering back in.
Yeah, I hardwired concert stuff for years. I have great Neil Young. I've got great Fish and a whole bunch, Bruce, all hardwired. And in this one Neil Young photo I have, you can see me. I'm down like this at the lip of the stage. Click, click, click.
Right. Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I'm in most of my remote pictures because I'm on the other side of the court. So you could actually, if you really want to look, you could see me. But did I send you? I think I sent you the Bruce shot I shot at the last show at the Sports Arena.
So cool.
You want to hear a quick story? You got a second?
Do it.
All right. So I go see the Broadway show. My sister, God bless her, for my birthday, she was able to finagle us to meet Bruce, and Patty after the show. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. And I had done a number at the last show, which actually was 7 years ago yesterday. The last show at the Sports Arena, last event ever. I had been the official photographer of the Sports Arena for years. And when Bruce decided to come back and do the River Tour, the reprise, my boss, who was still there from the 80s, the same guy, calls me up. He says, Bruce is closing the building. You want to come shoot the last show ever, the last event ever? I said, what? Is that a question? I mean, of course I'm going to do that. And the caveat was I had to come early in the morning because Bruce had consented to do a picture with the 6 people who was still working at the Sports Arena from the 80s. And we waited around. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll come a little early, and I'll just wait. Knowing I knew exactly how to get to the catwalk. I knew it was never locked. You come in, he had already played 3 shows, so that everything was set up. There was no security. He just walked right up to the catwalk, set up my overhead camera. I knew exactly when he was going to go to the secondary stage for Hungry Heart. And if you look at the picture, one day I'll show you. If you look at the picture, I shot it kind of wide. I'm actually in the picture with holding up my little remote and with the red light going off.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. So Annie Leibovitz, by the way, did a whole spread on Bruce from that tour, Vanity Fair or something.
I remember.
And she took a picture of the screen of that moment, like the video screen, and they ran it a full, like 2 pages in the magazine. I'm like, but I have the actual picture.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny. Anyway, man, thank you so much. It's so much fun talking to you.
Well, when I come your way, I'm going to take you up on a tour.
Dude, anytime. The invitation is there. I'm going to lay the seed with my boss for the finals.
Beautiful.
There's a lot of red tape there at the NBA. We'll figure something out. All right. But, if you're in LA, would love to even just get together for lunch, show you my not so transparent gallery over here.
Yeah. And you got to get out my way. And if you want to come down to the festival,
thank you.
It's sold out, but I might know a guy.
Oh, that would be amazing. It'd be great. Yeah. And I got to see my kid. I haven't seen my daughter in a while. She went to school back at UArts in Philly and dances professionally there. So that'd be great. And I know somebody's got some shows going on in September that I might have to catch back east. So we'll see.
It's true. That's true.
All right, my man. Thanks so much.
Appreciate you.
Great
Thanks,
conversation.
man.
Okay. Bye.
Cheers.
Yeah. Well, folks, I think you could tell that this conversation could have gone on forever. I'm so thankful to Danny for taking the time to chat with me. He is truly a legend of photography. Please check out Danny's book, Danny Clinch, Still Moving. It's an epic work from a legendary career so far. I encourage all of you to get a copy for yourself. I get a kick out of seeing Danny doing his thing at a Springsteen show. Love his work and so grateful to get to know him on this episode. Check out his gallery, the Transparent Clinch Gallery, if you happen to be in Asbury Park, New Jersey, or you make a special trip to go there. His Instagram is at DannyBones64, at DannyBones64. Many thanks to my terrific producer, Eugenia Chow, and our editors, Megan and Sean, as well as our social media manager, Michael. Remember, everyone, you can find us on the iHeart app and online, as well as Apple and Spotify and your favorite podcast platform. Keep following us on Instagram at Legends of Sport, our Twitter at Legends_of Sport, our website, legendsofsport.net, and our YouTube and TikTok channels, Legends of Sport. My photography can be found on Instagram and Twitter at ADBPhoto Inc. So thanks, everyone, for continuing to support the Legends of Sport podcast. We love bringing these episodes to you guys. So remember to rate and review. And, of course, as always, tell all your friends. We'll be back next week with another great guest and episode. Until then, stay safe and stay well.